Um, Hi everyone, good evening. This is Mukesh Gupta here, and today we are going to talk about how do you lead transformation, large-scale transformation. There is enough said and written about large-scale transformation. There is enough written and said about change management, but is that enough? We are living in a world which is changing so fast that we need to adapt just to keep pace with the change that is happening around us is a major challenge. On top of that, if we really want to thrive, we need to not only be able to manage the change that is happening around us, but also to be able to learn how to lead transformation in such a way that we are ahead of the curve. So today we will talk about a little bit about what I'm thinking around how do you lead large-scale transformation from that point of view. How to stay ahead of the game when the world around you is changing really fast. So let's dig into it. So when it comes to leading transformation, there are two words, right? So leading and then there is transformation. So leading is like sugar mixed in water. It's there. It can't be seen though, right? It exists across all activities. Irrespective of what you do, you need to be a leader. We'll come to what being a leader means in a little bit, but just understand that it is important that we lead the entire set of activities. It's also like the oxygen in the air, without which there is no transformation possible. And AIR, in a way, is an acronym for accountability, initiative, and responsibility. We have to take the responsibility. We have to take the initiative and be accountable for what we are trying to do. Again, definition of leadership, right? So you are accountable, you take responsibility not only for yourself and what you do, but also for everyone who's around you. And last but not the least, you take initiative. You decide what is it that you want to do, and you go after doing that. So we'll come to transformation in just a bit, right? So there are 5 phases in any transformation project. So the first is the instigation or the inspiration. This instigation or inspiration can come from the need or the mandatory need to change because the environment has changed. And so if you don't change, you no longer are relevant. It could also be because you aspire and you aspire to be someone much better. You want to go to a place where it is much better than where you are today. So it can be aspirational in nature, or it can be around the need to survive, right? So either one of those can actually kickstart any transformation project. So 4 phases: initiate, mobilize, scale, and embed. And if you actually see this, it's a cycle, right? So you start a project, you mobilize the people around it, you scale this to see impact, then you embed this so that the impact is realized, or the value that you wanted to realize is actually realized and captured. And then again, you start the next process of initiation, mobilization, scale, and embed. Let's look at each one of these in a little bit more detail. So first phase is initiate. So one of the important things that we need to understand is the need for building awareness or understanding around why are we changing and around the change itself, right? So the change, what is it that we are trying to change? Who are the change agents who will be impacted and who will be working with us? What is the environment and how does the environment needs to change? What are some of the triggers that we need to put in place in the environment such that the change can actually be triggered and it serves as a reminder for people to make the necessary change in their behavior. So there are multiple levels of change that you can attempt to do. So there can be a policy change. There could be a change in the business process. There could be change in how systems work or function. These could be IT systems or otherwise. The changes need need to be done in terms of behavior, in terms of relationship, in terms of how people interact with each other. It can be in terms of the belief, not just of the individual, but of the organization as well. And the most difficult change is changing the culture of the organization. If you actually see from bottom to top, it gets more and more difficult and more harder to make the kind of change. And at the same time, the impact goes that much more higher as we go from the bottom to the top. So policy change, while it's easy to make, the impact is also not really great. Culture change, while it is really hard to make, the impact is also significant, right? So we need to understand what is the level of change that we are trying to drive within the organization, because that determines what actions you will take, that determines how will you engage your stakeholders, that determines how will you embed the process, that determines how much effort you put into the transformation project itself, right? Change means you are changing from something that you currently are living and what your current reality is to a future reality. So unless you know exactly what you're going towards, no change is possible. So the first 101 for change or transformation projects, as everyone knows, is you need to know what is it that you're trying to achieve. What is it that you're transforming to? What is your goal? So unless that vision is not clear, very difficult to drive any transformation project to success, right? And not just that, it is important not only for you to know what is it that you're going after, it is important for everyone else to know that vision as well. There are some times where the vision is not clear, but the direction is. That's okay as well. As long as we know that this is the direction that we are going towards, as long as we know this is the route that we are taking, the destination will come and become clearer as we go forward, that's okay as well. So once you've identified what is it that you want to change, you need to find your change agents, right? So there are three buckets of people typically who that you can put people into. So the first bucket of people are those who will get impacted by what is it that you're trying to change. The second bucket of people are influential leaders. So these are people who will need to be connected to, who will need to sign off on your leadership, on your transformation project itself. And last but not the least, there are influential connectors. So these are people who are not necessarily in leadership positions, but they are influential because they are the people who connect people. They are the people who connect processes. They are the people who connect dots within your organization. In any organization, you know, if you want to get something done, these are the people that actually can make it happen, right? And depending upon the intersections, so for example, people who are impacted and are also influential connectors, you need to do something. What do you do and how do you engage with them? So people who are influential leaders and are also impacted, you need to keep them updated all the time, right? So people who are influential leaders as well as connectors, you need to make sure that they are always up to date in terms of what is happening. And people who are all three, they are your change agents. They are your key people whom you need to actually target. And depending upon which bucket people fall into, your communication plans will change, the way you engage with them, how you engage with them, how often do you engage with them, all of that changes depending upon which bucket people fall into, right? So now we know that, in any transformation project, there are people who get impacted. Now, the question then you need to ask yourself is, what is the reaction to the transformation that you're trying to drive? Are they conspirators? Are they combative with the change that you're trying to drive? Are they compliant? Are they cooperative? Are they collaborative? Or are they co-creative? you will usually find people in each one of these buckets. There will be some people who are change agents and who are willing to come sit with you and create the entire transformation project and be there with you as your key pillar of support. Those are the co-creators. And then there will be people who want to sabotage your project because of whatever reasons. There could be political reasons, there could be power struggles, there could be whatever else or whatever reasons that people resist change too. And again, if you see from bottom to top, and you can also look at this as a dial, right? So you, on one end of the dial is the conspirator and the other end of the dial is co-creative. So one end, the engagement is really, commitment to change is really, really low. And on the other end, the commitment to change is really, really high. Now, you can also see that engagement at the bottom three stages is compliant is the lowest form of engagement. Conspirator is the highest form of engagement because they actively try to sabotage your project. So they're highly engaged. Same way, above the line, cooperative is low in engagement because they have to do it. And co-creative is very high in terms of engagement because they will actively work with you, design the change project itself to drive what exactly is the outcome that you're going towards. So you need to understand, depending upon the engagement levels, how you want to deal with each one of these set of people. And at what point in time you want to deal with all of these people as well. So I'm going a little fast today because we are trying to cover a whole lot of material in about 60 to 75 minutes. There is a deep dive 60-minute session for each one of these phases, which I will link to in the video as well, which you can go through if you want to get even more deeper understanding of this. So typically, when we are trying to work with people, we need to understand what drives people, because that then decides, out of these four, we need to identify what is driving whom, and that actually creates influence for us. So there are only four things that, in my opinion, drive people. One is money. Can they make more money? One is time. Can you save them more time, or can you give them back more time? There is status, which is, after going through this entire exercise, does their status improve or decrease? And last but not the least, recognition, emotional recognition, social recognition, political recognition. So one of these four, and ideally, a combination of these four is what creates behavioral change, or at least the interest to change. Now, what we need to understand is, for each one of those key stakeholders, we need to know what of these four drives them individually and tailor our message and tailor our ability to influence them accordingly. So that's the people, right? Change agents. Now the environment. So there are two parts to the environment. So one is an internal environment, one is an external environment. So every organization has a unique take on how they function, right? Some might be customer-centric. Some might be, collaborative. Some might be political. Some might be led by a particular function. Some might be led by a particular product, whatever it is, right? So you need to understand the environment or the culture within which you are functioning. So once you have done that, you also need to understand the external environment within which your larger organization is functioning. Your ability to change and your motivation to change, right? So that's what I mean by the external environment. Ability to change is, have you in the past experienced significant change, and have you as an organization built up enough muscle and capacity and capability to drive large-scale change? So you either are stagnant, which means that you've not had successful change efforts in the past, or did not need to. It would be both ways, right? or you're adaptive because you've seen such changes in the past and you've actually gone through these transformation efforts successfully. So which means you know what it takes in order to drive a large scale, significant transformation project. It is not just enough to have the ability to change. It is also important to have the motivation to change, right? Is your motivation low? Is your motivation high? So are you aspiring to something? Are you trying to survive? That again is a high in terms of motivation. Aspiration, survival, both fall in that segment. And if your ability to change is high and your motivation to change is also high, then you're poised for successful transformation, right? So that is all about initiating the project itself, identifying who your stakeholders are, identifying what drives them, identifying what exactly are you going to do in terms of how do you communicate, who are going to be your stakeholders, who are going to be your steering committees, who are going to be your people whom you want to keep informed, whom do you want to reach out and kind of, make sure that they are always aware of what's happening in your project, right? Once you've initiated a project, you need to be able to mobilize people behind you, behind the project. How do you go about doing that, right? So gone are the days when top-down mandate would work and would be enough. Now you need to attack, or you need to drive change from both top to bottom and bottom up. Not only do you need leaders as champions for the transformation that you're trying to drive, but you also need to be able to do grassroots uprising. You need to be able to get those people who will be impacted by the transformation that you are trying to do involved in the entire process. You need to be able to get them going behind you. Not all of them. We'll come to that. If you remember the innovation adoption curve, there are these early adopters. Then there are these fast followers. All you need to do is go stage by stage. You first need to identify your early adopters. Once you have them, your change agents, then you need to enable them to go out into the field, into the organization, and be the change agents that they can be in order to mobilize further people, right? So if you remember the spectrum of conspirators to co-creators, you need to identify those co-creators and those compliant people and those collaborative people to initially find the energy and the drive to keep the project moving or the transformation going. So one of the things that usually when it comes to stakeholder management, or when it comes to driving adoption of any transformation project, people look at buy-in, stakeholder buy-in. I think we need to move away from buy-in to investors who would like to invest with you, right? So we need to move from a mindset of they need to change and move to how do we change. We need to move from being the director, okay, I'm saying you do this, you do this, you do this, to becoming a co-creator, an actor by yourself. You sit with them, you work with them to arrive at something that you will then go after together, right? So from being an observer, standing from outside and observing what's happening, to becoming a co-creator and a co-initiator, right? So that's the shift that we need to make in order to do well, in order to really successfully transform whatever it is that we are trying to drive. So usually when it comes to transformation, when it comes to change, one of the things that always comes up is resistance to change. People are always say that, they are resistant to change. And this is one of the reasons why any significantly large transformation project fails, because the people who are driving or leading the transformation project fail to understand how much resistance to change is actually there within the organization. Especially now, when everything around us is changing, we all crave for a little bit of stability in our life, whether it is personal or professional. So every time there is a new change project, there is a new transformation project, there is fatigue. Nobody wants to go through another transformation project. So there is enormous amount of resistance to change. Or is it? We'll come to that in just a bit. Now, I remember reading this somewhere, this formula, right? So DVF should be greater than resistance to change in order for people to actually start moving. So this is the key equation when it comes to mobilization, right? So D is dissatisfaction with the current status. If people are happy with the status quo, why change, right? So the first thing that we need to do in order for us to drive the change is to create discomfort with the current situation, the status quo. The more uncomfortable the status quo becomes, the more people want to change, right? So V stands for vision. What is the vision that we are going after? What does that vision offer me as an individual who is impacted by the change, whom you want to go with you? If you remember the 4 things that motivate, on top of that, what is the vision and how does that translate for me on those 4 things? Money, time, status, and recognition, right? That's the vision. And clearly defined first steps. It is not enough to have a vision. It is super important for people to know what do they do next. What is the first step that they need to take to start moving towards the destination that we are trying to go towards. Irrespective of whether the vision of the destination is very clear or we only know the direction. But we still need to know what is the first step that we need to take. Each one of the employees, everyone who is impacted, they need to know for them, what is the first step? What is the next step? What is the next step? What is the next step? Right? And if you actually look at people are not resistant to change in the workplace. They are resistant when they don't have a voice in the change that we are trying to drive. If they already know, if they have a voice, if they know the reason why we are changing, if they have been part of the decision on what needs to change, the resistance to change is that much lower. It's not that it's not there, it's that much lower. So one of the most disruptive thing that can happen in any of our lives, I think, is getting married. First, most disruptive thing. And of course, then having children. So massive change. But not a lot of us shy away from it, right? We embrace it. We, in fact, look forward to it. So it's not that change is difficult. It's change that you do not want to is difficult. So that is the reason why the discomfort with the current status is super important. In fact, I would go to an extent where I can say that the equation can be changed to vision into first steps to the power of discomfort needs to be higher than the resistance to change. Very simple. The higher the discomforture, the more willing people are willing to change. People are to the change that you're proposing. It is important to drive energy, right? In terms of driving change, you need energy and momentum. So let's first talk about energy. Energy, Newton's law states, right? So anything, if it needs to move from inertia or move away from inertia, you need to apply energy to it. So how do you apply energy to it? Again, a simple equation. meaning times hope times power, right, is equal to energy. Now, meaning in terms of how is this entire transformation project meaningful to me? Hope is all about how will this make my life better? And power is, do I have the agency in order to have affected what needs to change and how it needs to change? When you multiply all of them, you have enough energy, right? So the finding of why leads to the meaning, right? So the purpose of the change leads to the meaning for each one of these individual employees. One of the biggest mistakes that leaders do when it comes to leading large-scale transformation is not necessarily, how do I put it, customize their communication to the people. They end up doing one large communication to everyone, assuming that everyone requires the same communication, everyone is at the same level of engagement, everyone is at the same level of commitment, whereas they're not. And for each section of these people, their why may be different. And once you identify that why and you're able to address that why, you get them to invest in your transformation project. And that is when you find energy and you find momentum. So this is all about agency, right? Power. Knowing that you can do something about whatever it is that you're trying to drive gives you the power. So agency is super important. And that is why top-down mandates no longer work. That is why multi-million-dollar transformation projects fail, even though they had the blessings of the CEO, they had the blessings of whoever else was leading the project. Adoption at that level, at an organizational level, behavior change at that organizational level cannot happen unless people feel that they have the agency and they decide that they want to be part of the transformation project and that it is good for them and good for the company, right? So that agency is super important. That is what gives them power. And the power to make the change is energizing. That, by the way, is my son about 10 years back. I know if he sees this, he's not going to be happy. Anyway, so power to make the change, the agency gives is energizing. And energy is needed in order to overcome the resistance to change, right? Another way to look at energy, E is equal to MC squared, famous equation, right? So in my take, E is energy, M is momentum, and C is communication. So once you've identified all of this, once you know, once you've given them the agency, they've committed to what they want to do, then it is all about creating momentum and doubling down on communication. Communication, not just one simple communication sent to everyone, but customized to every segment of the people who are impacted, whether it is your steering committee, whether it is your impacted people, whether it is your influential leaders, whether it is your influential connectors. Each one of those segment of people requires a different kind of communication. And that is why it is communication square. So you need to double down on what exactly do each one of those stakeholder segments need to hear from us. Now the question is, how do we create momentum, right? How do we build momentum? So momentum starts from, having a large vision, breaking it down to, let's say, for example, an annual goal or the project objective. How does that break into from a quarterly perspective? Then how does it break into monthly perspective? We are looking at it from a timeline perspective, right? And from a monthly perspective, what does it mean to come to a weekly perspective? What do you need to do on a weekly basis? What do you need to do on a daily basis? And what do you need to do now? Is this clear for your people? Do they know what they need to do now? And once they have done that, they need to know what do they do next, and what does good look like a week from now, a month from now, a quarter from now, and a year from now, or the end result of the project, whenever you want to conclude that. So this ability to break things down into chunks and clarify this, each one of those stakeholders, is what builds momentum. And once you start doing this, so this is just the action. This doesn't necessarily build momentum. What builds momentum is mass into velocity, right? More people doing what needs to be done is what creates momentum. So mass is the number of people. Velocity is how much are they able to do on an ongoing basis. How much clarity do we have, or how much clarity do they have in order to do whatever it is that is expected out of them. And once that starts going, you start seeing some momentum, right? Now comes communication. So there are two kinds of lens to look at this from a communication perspective. So one is the ethos, logos, and pathos, which is the typical three modes of communication. And then if you want to look at it slightly differently, you can also look at it from a tell, show, and ask. So you can tell people what's happening, what's been achieved. You can show the results of what has been achieved, and you can ask people, what do you think you need help with? What do you want the management or the project team to do so that they can find more momentum from that point of view? So you can tell, show, and ask. You can give logic. So in your communications, there can be logic as to know why you are doing this. What happens if you do this? You can do emotion. You can use emotions, right? So for example, why do you think it makes sense for all of us? Not from a logical perspective, but from an emotional perspective. And then, of course, you use your own status in terms of authority, right? As the leader of transformation effort, where do you think things are going? So it needs to be a balance of both. You need to have logic in your communication. You need to have emotions in your communication. You need to have your perspective in terms of what we are doing well, what we are not doing well. And of course, you need to tell something, which is, progress, show progress and results, and ask people for what they think is happening right, and what they think, where do they think they need help. This is what is called full spectrum communication. So you do both logic, emotions, you show, ask, and tell. So you cover all of this. Sometimes you do this on written communications. Sometimes you do this when you are doing your all hands. Sometimes you do this in your steering committee meetings. Sometimes you do this in the hallways. Depending upon wherever you go, you continue to communicate. Communication never stops, right? And depending upon whom you're communicating to and what you're communicating, you need to change the way you communicate or the mode of communication in one of these things. So again, another way to look at this entire thing is you show data, right? You show logic and you show emotion. So you can prove as to results by showing data. You can appeal to people's logic by making arguments. And then, of course, you can appeal to people's hearts by appealing to their emotions. Last but not the least, it is important at this point in time in your transformation journey to set up a red flag device. So what is a red flag device? It is a way or a mechanism for your team to raise a red flag at any given point when they think something that is supposed to be going one way is not going the other way. That could have a significant impact on the result that we are trying to drive or the direction that we are trying to go. So in the olden times, in the Toyota manufacturing system, it was the bell. People could actually create, stop the production line whenever they thought that there was something wrong in the line. That was a red flag device. There is a retailer, a marble manufacturer in the US, who set up a red flag device by printing on the invoice saying that if you are not happy with whatever product that you buy from us, you keep the product, tell us why you're not happy, and we'll refund you the money for the product that you bought from us. So they don't have to return the product. They can keep the product. But they also get their money back. What this does is ensures every time there is a refund request, someone in the organization will actually go back and look at the entire process to figure out what went wrong and where it went wrong and why it went wrong, and set and correct it right then and there so that it doesn't occur again. Another kind of red flag device is having a CEO having his mobile number made available to all his customers and clearly telling people that you can call this mobile number anytime, day or night, if you think there is a significant problem that needs to be addressed. So what happens? In the beginning, there will be a flood of calls, but that also tells the CEO where exactly his organization needs to improve. Same way for your transformation project, identify what makes sense and set up a red flag device so that people can actually stop things when the cost of change is the lowest. You do not want to spend $1 million and 6 months and then find out something which you could have found out 3 months back before having spent those $1 million. Set up a red flag device. Once you've done the mobilization, once you start seeing people move across the initial momentum going, so the fast adopters have already adopted this, then comes the mass majority. This is where people who are compliant or who want to cooperate, which means that the lowest in terms of engagement, they see everyone else around them actually going through with the change. And they look for that before they commit. And once they start looking this and seeing that people are mobilizing, they will fall in line. And once they fall in line is when you achieve scale. So one important thing that we need to keep in mind here is we need to replicate the processes, not duplicate. Again, the emphasis here is for us to understand the different stakeholders involved and tailor the communication, the process according to what they need and what drives them. Right? So you need to replicate yourself as the change agents within the organization. You don't need to duplicate yourself. You need to replicate the change agents who can go out and be what you were for the initial round of change agents. You need to create a network of change agents. That's what I meant, right? Not just one, but multitudes across the organization where the transformation is needed. And you don't just create these networks. You also need to train them to understand what exactly is expected out of them. What is your ask from those change agents? What do you want them to do within your organization? Craft your key ask in such a way that it is simple. Very, very simple and straight, hard-hitting, so that they cannot miss what they are expected to do. Takes a little bit of thinking, reflecting, but that's what leaders are for, right? Create a living FAQ document, which kind of answers every question that these change agents might be asked when they go out and be the change agents that you want them to be. make life simple for them. Anything and everything that they need should be available in this living FAQ document. And living document, right? So every time they get a question which is not answered in the FAQ document, it gets added and it gets responded there, so that everyone else who's a change agent has access to the same document. Understand that stories change people. Help your change agents come up with their own stories as to why this change is important for them, why they are involved as the change agents, and why it is important for everyone else around them to get involved as well. You have your own story, you have your own narrative, but unless they can adapt it to themselves, unless they are able to tell the story from their point of view, it is very difficult for them to go out and convince people or even lead people, right? For that matter. So help them identify their stories. Teach them the principles of storytelling. Very simple, right? So you do not meander. So it's short and simple. There is no preamble. You directly get into the story. It is personal for them. They know what exactly they are trying to drive. Story not just for the sake of story, but for what exactly are you trying to drive the story for. What is the curiosity there? So, it should create or generate some curiosity, and it needs to be practical, right? For them and for the people that they're telling the story for or to. Teach them the principles of influence. 6 principles, right? The principle of reciprocity. You do this, I do this in exchange. Principle of scarcity, principle of authority, principle of consistency, liking, and consensus. So these are the 6 principles. One of these 6 principles, or ideally 2 or 3 of them in combination, would work wonders. Teach them how to influence people. Teach them about behavioral economics. Teach them about nudge. Right? They are your change agents after all. They are there where you cannot be. And by doing this, you are doing 2 things simultaneously. Slaying two demons with 1 stone, right? Number 1, you are driving them, or you are teaching them the skills that is required for them to get better leaders, to get better as leaders. So the next time around, they are much better equipped, and that much more easier for you to kind of recruit them. Number 2, your change project or the transformation project that you're trying to drive now, the chances of it becoming successful is high. So you're doing both, and you're creating a positive spiral. So you do this project, it is successful. So the next time around, it's easier to do the transformation project, and the chances of it becoming a success is better. Third time around, even faster, even better chances of success. Fourth time around, even faster, even better chances of success. And at the same time, you're creating a bench of leaders who can step up and take on your role if you have to move up or out, depending upon whatever it is that happens. Remember, you can't change everyone. Can't change them all. There will always be people who will resist. There will always be people who are conspirators, who will always be against you. It's okay. You do not need to change everyone. As long as you are able to change the majority, there will always be laggards. One way to deal with them is to kind of find them different roles where they think and they have the energy and the passion to kind of change and move on, or you let them go. Or if it is okay with you for them to be where they are, let them be. Understand and remember that you can't change them all. So momentum is a very, very powerful force. Don't use it then. It works both ways. Positive momentum creates more positive momentum. Negative momentum creates more negative momentum. We need to be very, very careful about how do you use momentum in your environment. One of the things that you can do is not miss doing is celebrate every single success. Every time you've done something which has ended up in a good success, in a good result, celebrate it publicly. Make heroes out of people. The more heroes you make out of people because of the transformation project, the more people will want to enroll in the journey that you're going through. Because ultimately, everyone wants to be a hero of their own story. And by helping them become hero of your story is making your story part of their story. So make heroes out of people. Last but not the least, it is one thing to have seen the transformation take place within the organization. It is quite another to actually embed the entire thing, and that becomes the status quo. That's the fundamental measure of success for me when it comes to transformation projects. Has the new way of working or the new way of work, has that become the status quo? Then the transformation project has become successful. And of course, that status quo will need to change again, but that's in the next round. Before that, it needs to become the status quo. So how do we do that? Another equation, as you can say, I'm very fond of equations. Probably something to do with my bachelor's in applied sciences. So I like physics and equations a lot. So here B is a function of P and E. What do I mean by that? B is behavior. So people's behavior is a function of them, which is people, their personality, their needs, their wants, their expectations, and the environment that they work in or live in. The context is super important. I would go a step further and say that the context determines what people want and need and what they can be within an environment and their behavior. So very important to shape the environment or the context that we work in order for us to embed the change that we have driven or led. Right? So now, how do you sustain the change? Number one, public recognition of individual performance. Right? So you're making hero of someone wants or makes others aspire for being someone like that. Public recognition of team performance. It's not just enough for us to recognize the individual, but also the team. Public recognition of the leaders. So all of this, so at each level, tells the organization or tells everyone within the organization that this is what will be rewarded. This is what will be recognized. And I can tell you this, whatever gets recognized and rewarded is what you get as behavior. And not stop there, but you also need to have a meaningful celebration. Meaningful for them. If there is a team which wants to go on an outing, do so. If there is a team which wants training, do so. If there is a team which wants access to resources, do so. So meaningful celebration is super important. Nothing stops or nothing becomes embedded until formal controls and measures are put in place. Formal KPIs are put in place and measured on an ongoing basis. 6 months from now, 9 months from now, a year from now, whatever is your duration that you want to look at, your formal controls, your formal KPIs need to ensure that what change you drove is kind of sustained. which means that you need to redefine and update your formal controls and KPIs. Leverage the power of inertia. So if you, at the beginning of a transformation project, inertia is your enemy, because you have to expend a lot of energy in order for people to get people to move, right? E is equal to MC square and dVF greater than R and all of that. But at this stage of the project, you have to leverage the power of inertia so that whatever change or transformation that you have led through the organization, it's embedded within the organization. So that's kind of what I had in mind for today. I hope it was useful, helpful, and you took something away from this which you can actually use in your organization or in your next transformation journey. My name is Mukesh Gupta, and you can reach me on my LinkedIn, on the YouTube channel, if you want to have a conversation around leading transformation or any specific part of this entire cycle and want to go deeper into any of these topics. So until we see again, this is Mukesh signing off. Thank you so much. Take care.